All right, so when we think about comprehension in an exam setting, we must remember that our goal is to create a close reading, and a close reading is exactly that. We're not doing a gendered reading, we're not doing a contextual reading, we are focusing explicitly on the construction of the text that we are examining, and we are also thinking very much about ways to interpret that. Ideally, when you do a comprehension, you quite quickly form a sense or an impression or an understanding of what you feel the whole extract to potentially be about. That is not necessarily the case. So what I want to direct you to are some of my preferred techniques to really help you ascertain meaning and to build an understanding that you can then discuss. The first thing I want you to think about is this central idea: where is the conflict and what is causing the conflict in the text? Okay? You must decide between who is a conflict occurring. Is it between characters? Is it between a character and place? Is it entirely an internal conflict, or is it a combination thereof? There will be some semblance of context in a prose text, because without it, there is no scope whatsoever for character and then subsequently thematic development. The second thing I want you to question is the relationship between characters and their setting. Setting will invariably drive action by challenging characters in some way, or it will allow them to feel comfortable, or it is an environment in which they are disempowered relative to others. It's either their home and they feel comfortable there. It's a setting that they feel out of their depth. They feel challenged by it because of another character being in that particular location. If you're in the headmaster's office, for example, you are very much in the space where you are not the person of power. So as likely as not, setting helps establish a power dynamic. That can facilitate conflict, and it's the conflicts in which characters engage that ultimately reveal attitudes as the plot makes its way forward. So those two understandings are crucial. But what is also crucial is to get a sense of what is best called voice, which is the sound of the text relative to the words being chosen. Really what you need to consider is, how would this sound if it was read aloud? And that's, I would argue, even more important if it's a first-person text, in that it helps you get a sense of that narrating character. But when it's a narrator, you're getting a sense through trying to envisage the sound of their words, how they relate to the text or the story that they're telling, and you're also trying to get a sense of the attitudes, if you like, that they hold not only toward the characters but to the events in the story itself. One of the key things I'd like you to be mindful of when you are looking at the narrative voice is sentence length. Are you getting a sense of... Texts tend to flow. A calmer narrator it tends to write with longer sentences and that mixture of long and short. Higher intensity, a more depressed narrator, these sorts of things are much likely to use sequences of short sentences, because there is a need in the mind of the author or the narrator to continually be impactful, and it's full stops more than anything else, other than exclamation marks, that have that particular effect. You also start questioning the imagery. Is it very literal? Is it more figurative? If it's figurative, what exactly is being tapped into? Also, when you think about imagery, you're asking yourself, in terms of it being sensory, taste, touch, smell, they're often neglected. Try to use them a little bit more, at least look for them. And then also, of course, you want to be very mindful of visual imagery and oral imagery. And when it comes to oral imagery, don't just listen for the imagery that's being created, but also try to get a sense of the sound of the words through considering alliteration, assonance, and onomatopoeia. The more sentences flow, the more likely a reader is to accept what's being said at face value, or to discern in the narrator or the first-person narrator a sense of calmness or control. The harsher the sound, the harsher sounds tend to connect more closely to negative emotions or stronger negative emotions, whereas the softer sounds tend to connect more with sort of senses of harmony rather than disharmony. Now, if you can find one or two of those central conceits in terms of characterization or conflict, etc., hopefully by questioning the others in terms of sound, you will be able to create a meaning that starts to cohere. If you are all at sea with what you're describing, then simply a breadth of technical analysis will push your mark higher and higher. The more explicit and thorough you can be in terms of identifying techniques, the better. It won't entirely make up for a lack of a perceptive thematic reading, but it'll go a long way to filling that gap. In the end, you have to broadly speculate on what you think all of these little parts that you've looked at can be said to cohere into, and it's something you have to decide to say. The text is the text. The interpretation, though, is yours. If you be very careful. If you may well see in a text reason to interpret it symbolically or see a secondary layer of meaning, but please do not ever assert that something that you are really very much interpreting as, don't describe it as kind of like, don't ever forget a text has a face value or primary meaning on some level, and that must be acknowledged and discussed before you start looking at a secondary or more symbolist or allegorical reading. Don't ever let the secondary take precedence over the primary. You must do both, because if you are interpreting a primary layer, well, you must establish what that primary layer is and then explain how and why, based on what is in the text, you are going to that secondary layer of meaning. It might be historical associations with particular symbols, for example. Just because you see a dove doesn't mean it means peace. So there must be a variety of factors contributing to the building of, if you like, a non-literal reading. So these are the most important things, and I also do think one of the things you really do want to make sure you do in a close prose reading is examine a variety of techniques, a variety of parts of the text, and it never ceases to amaze me how often boys don't do this enough, but that is quote. You cannot do a close reading without focusing closely on the specific details in the text, in the construction of language, in the composition of phrase and sentence, of paragraph. That stuff is vital. So you need to be looking at, across any response, elements of diction, tone, style, imagery, and on that other narrative level, character, conflict, setting, and ultimately the interaction of these components. That's what produces a thorough close reading, so that is what you must do.